Good afternoon, everybody. I am Assata Richards, and I am the presenter or facilitator for this upcoming workshop or session. And so the title of this session is Beyond Economics, the Social and the Cultural Benefits of Cooperatives. And so I welcome your curiosity. I welcome your participation. I have my coworker here, Mary Claire Neal. If you have questions as I go through this conversation, she's going to help me attend to those questions as we have what I hope is a dialogue and a conversation on really what I see as the ways in which we communicate, we analyze, we summarize, and we really understand the value of cooperatives. And so I'm going to start by talking about the work that we're doing in Houston and how that work was seated around what we see as the social and really cultural assets that we had in our community. So I'm starting is our tradition as a person of African descent to start by acknowledging ancestors. And those are individuals who have come before us, who've laid a pathway for the work that we do. And one of those individuals is Ella Josephine Baker, who did an enormous amount of work. If you read the book Collective Courage, you became familiar with her. But you may also know her from, you may not know her, but you know her impact from the SNCC of the the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. She was the architect of that work. And so she said in her work around cooperatives, courage, every great movement started as we have started. Do not feel discouraged because in our few months of life, we have not rivaled some long established cooperative venture. Each successful cooperative enterprise has taken some time and energy and sacrifice to establish. Nothing worth accomplishing is ever achieved without work. And so just to give encouragement for those of you who are starting new on this journey, have hit some roadblocks, that Ms. Baker reminds us that we are to feel proud of our work and to know that it is work indeed. And so I want to talk to you and ground you in my neighborhood. I am a third generation resident of a community known as the historic Third Ward. And our work in this neighborhood is really framed in what we call Corporation Third Ward. How do we create really a cooperative economy, a solidarity economy, which is based, of course, in the cooperative businesses. And our home care cooperative, community care cooperative, is really at the base of that work, and one of the foundational cooperatives that we've started in the community. And so when we started in this work, you know, many people talk to us about technical expertise and really this idea, you know, you needed to have extensive cooperative education. And we really didn't have any of that. There are not a lot of cooperatives in Texas. There are a few, a strong cooperative sector in Austin, which is not near Houston, right? In another region of the state, and really seen as a bastion of progressiveness, right? Houston is a developers city, high in, you know, strong in capitalism, really in entrepreneurship, founded by land speculators, right? And so we have a different, really legacy, and particularly among the African American community, not a strong history of the civil rights movement or any really labor, strong labor presence. And so, you know, we had to look for other really building blocks for our work. And so we had done a comprehensive needs assessment in our neighborhood, right? Trying to understand what were the needs of this community. So I just want to put this in context. We are talking about a deeply impoverished or economic stratified community, right? Almost 50% of these residents make under $10,000 a year, right? High unemployment, right? Some of the highest unemployment in our part of the city or in the city. And then this issue that people are unable to work, and they're not able to work because they have health problems, right? So a community that is struggling with health disparities. And so thinking about the living conditions, right? What is the context of the lives of our residents? So you think in a very modern time, 7% have no water, cold or hot water, no AC. Almost a fourth of our residents are living in mold, right? And 40 some percent have pets, rats, roaches, right? And so living in really a challenging physical conditions, physical structures. And then what are our residents concerned about, right? What are their concerns? Traffic, domestic violence, prostitution, child abuse, gang violence, property damage, drug dealing, right? So you have a neighborhood where physically, economically, financially have a lot of challenges, right? And then something called this social disorganization, right? Where the institutions are not operating in a way that we're able to achieve safety and security, right? So this is a neighborhood by all stretches are challenged. And you may think, is this a neighborhood right for cooperative business development? It takes a lot of investment and time and resources and education, right? So if you thought about starting cooperative businesses or starting businesses or investing economically in a community, these may be warning signs for why this would not be the right time or this would not be the right residence, right? And so one of the things that we were surprised at, because our work is around assets, to say, what are the other building blocks, right? If we're not talking about financial, if we're not even talking about social order, what are some of the other things that we think are core to the functioning of a good neighborhood? And so asking the residents, what do you want help with, right? Help with education, help with employment, job training, childcare, housing, rent, utilities. So again, seeing the residents articulated desires for their community was important for us, right? So they understood what was necessary to improve their lives and begin to build our work around how do we create opportunities around that. But the nugget and the jewel in this work is this next slide for you. This was surprising to people on our team, right? So we asked the residents, right, to understand, impoverishment, economic challenges, housing challenges. How does this neighborhood relate to one another? What are the basis of the relationship of the infrastructure of community, right? So when you think about a neighborhood, you think of infrastructure as the roads, the water system, that type of infrastructure, but thinking about infrastructure in terms of relational ways, right? And so this asks people, not would they help a neighbor, not would they give someone a ride or watch a neighbor's child. This question asks, do you know someone in this neighborhood who would help an elderly neighbor? Do you know someone that would give someone a ride? Not yourself, right? But asking them about others in their neighborhood. Would you watch a neighbor's child? Now, you may help someone with their trash, give someone a ride to the store, but watch someone's child, right? So this idea that this is a community that really has a strong, what we call social safety net, right? And then what is their civic participation? Despite all of these challenges and circumstances, almost 70% had participated in the electoral process, right? So very engaged and not disengaged. And then this question about satisfaction. So you heard me talk about how much money they earn. You saw the income level, the unemployment rate, the health conditions. You saw the housing conditions. But despite all of that, they're satisfied living in this community. And that satisfaction is correlated to this way in which this neighborhood is supporting one another. So for us, that becomes the social and the cultural assets in which we believe was the foundation of strong cooperative businesses, right? So not having to teach people how to be together, not having to convince people that there's a shared benefit when we are working together and helping one another out, right? So this was an indication to us that this community had the basis down. And so this is what leads us to talk about the topic of social capital, right? This is, I just want to say, I didn't formally introduce myself. I'm a trained researcher, right? And in studying in graduate school, we learned about what makes strong neighborhoods, what makes strong communities. And this is the stuff that people dream of having in a neighborhood, right? This is the stuff that they do everything to try to create block clubs and, civic associations, right? And in this neighborhood, there was not a civic association prior, when this study was going on. So the kind of ways in which we think we're constructing communities, right? This neighborhood already has what we call the good foundation and the building blocks. And leads to something that we formally call social capital, right? And so we're going to talk about that explicitly. Social capital. So what I'm really talking about is what we see as really strong benefits and strong foundations of cooperative businesses, right? And it is the way in which we can talk to individuals around our value for cooperatives that they think connects to them beyond the economics. And the reason why I say beyond the economics, because for us, it has taken a long time for us to actualize the economic benefits of our cooperatives, right? We've been doing this work since 2018, right? And so as you know, and I know, it takes a long time to create cooperative business, particularly home care cooperatives, right? They are intensive in terms of regulation. They're intensive in terms of capital, right? And so even when we are able to stand these businesses up, people are not going to get rich, right? We're going to pay them $15 an hour, but that doesn't meet all their needs, right? And at the point that we're at, we're not even at the point that we can provide them health care benefits, right? We cannot provide them retirements, right? That's part of our long-term strategy, right? So the question is, why would people be a part of these cooperative businesses, right? Yesterday, we had our first hiring fair, and we hired 8 people, right? 8 people, right? In a time where home care businesses are struggling to retain and to hire people. We hired 8 people, and we're not even offering them full-time or 30 hours at a work yet, right? But they came for something, and we're going to communicate what did they come from, right? What did they hear? What did they experience in our interest meeting that made them say, this is worth me being involved in, right? And we're talking about, individuals who are economically stratified. So there's this question of called social capital, right? This social capital is the potential of individuals to secure benefits and invent solutions to problems through membership and social networks. It sounds like a cooperative, right? Right? Secure benefits, invent solutions to problems through membership in social networks, right? The very function, I would argue, of what cooperatives are, right? Well, let's break this down. Let's understand this, right? Because I think many times when we talk about cooperatives, we talk about this economic benefit of cooperatives, which exists. And then we also talk about the democracy of cooperatives, right? But I would argue there's something else in the way cooperatives exist and function that gives a benefit to members. And so there are 3 dimensions. So one is relationships, the interconnected networks of relationships, right? So it can be between individuals and groups, right? Social ties with social participation. I would say this is in our membership, but is also in this important piece of cooperation among cooperatives, right? The relationships that we establish with other cooperative ventures, right? That bring a benefit to the individuals in our cooperative. It's the level of trust that characterizes these relationships, right? How do we trust each other, right? How do we, relate to one another? And this issue of trust is very important. I would argue that it's one of the reasons why in our work, a lot of people are unable to join cooperatives, right? Because it requires trust, right? But once it is developed and created, it becomes a valuable commodity. The idea that there is a group of people that I can trust, particularly when you're living in a society, when you've been in a workplace where there's a lot of competition, that this issue of trust is important. And this is important. Resources or benefits that are both gained and transferred from social connections, right? And social participation. Not just the paycheck you get from the cooperative, right? But again, the way our relationships with one another transfer information, right? About being able to solve needs and address problems. So it is not the sense, and I know we think about this like where the cooperatives are sending out a newsletter, right? We're giving benefits, we're telling them about a food bank, or we're telling them about, rental assistance, right? That's important, right? But how do the members themselves transfer, information and create benefits for one another? That's an important part of social capital. And I argue a strong benefit of what cooperatives can create. And so when we do this investment, right? If we do this work of creating relationships, building trust, right? Building these networks, what happens, right? We have shared norms and values, right? Social trust, collaboration, and cooperation, a shared sense of identity. We belong to something, right? We are community care cooperative, right? Strong social support. When something happens in my life, there are people that I see or I interact with or that I can reach out to who care about me. Reciprocity, right? What I give, I'm going to receive, right? I may not receive it in a one-to-one, but I know that giving is not giving to no end. There's a reciprocal relationship that exists, a shared understanding. They understand what's important to me, right? Interpersonal relationships. I have people that I can do things with, that I can share things with, right? So this is really, I would argue, really the pieces that keep our cooperatives together. And they're the reasons why people will continue to come back during good times as well as challenging times, because this is the substance of life, right? These are the things that human beings need, that social scientists have realized to function, to thrive. And so this social capital is a great return if we spend our time building it within our cooperative businesses. And that's what we're going to talk about. So social capital. So to break it down, so that's the return we receive, right? So social capital exists on two levels. So there's the individual level, right? I have social capital. That's my personal network, right? Those are the people I know. We hear this all the time, right? It's not what you know, it's who you know, right? We know this, right? This has been proven, right? So these are the relationships. And I argue that many people, we have found, I don't argue, but evidence shows that individuals, particularly in social economic stratified, right? Individuals have very tight networks, right? And so when there's a job or, any kind of resource, everybody in that network knows the same thing. What happens when you're able to expand your personal networks is that you get in new information, right? Oh, I didn't know, that vitamin D, right, had some protective factors at COVID-19, right? I didn't know that, right? Oh, thank you for telling me that, right? Right. So again, networks could bring in new information that you won't have. So we want people through their membership in our cooperative, as the cooperative grows, right? They're able to expand their networks, right? And then through that engagement and this mutual trust between people, we have collective social capital, right? So again, it's on the individual level, but as the individuals increase their social capital, that becomes a benefit to the group. So what I'm saying is that this work that we do to increase the social capital of individuals then becomes collective social capital for our cooperative businesses, right? So again, when we have a problem, when we have issues, right, we're able to work with others, right? We're able to bring ourselves into relationships with people on a group level that can assist us. And this is why I want to say cooperation among cooperatives matter, but not just cooperation among cooperatives matter, but the question came up yesterday. Are we working with any housing providers, right? Are we working with any senior centers, right? Right? Are we working with other places, churches, right? Because again, as we build relationships, right? And not just relationships to say, can I get some clients, right? But relationships where we are just sharing information or sharing support, right? So again, what we're talking about on the individual level can be magnified to the cooperative. You can be assessing what is the social capital that this cooperative has, right? If we had a problem or a challenge, how quickly could we solve those problems? What relationships have we created, right? That will allow us to meet the needs of our business as well as the needs of our members. And we're going to talk about that, right? So I just want to say that, you know, this may seem, and I'll acknowledge that I am a trained researcher, right? So oftentimes I can get my heads in the clouds, right? But I'm hoping to move this down to something very practical, right? Because I believe that it's important that we start tracking the presence of social capital, right? Because again, if we can talk to prospective cooperative members and say, you know, what is it like to work here? Have a group of people that you trust, a group of people that work together, a group of people that believe in reciprocity, a group of people who share common identity, right? That's the stuff that says work is meaningful, right? It's stuff that says that this is a place I want to be. These are a group of people I want to hang out with, right? These are people who we say, you know, this is these the people I work with are like my family, right? That is, I believe, the cooperative advantage that our businesses have over traditional businesses, right? They offer people these important pieces of their lives that I think very much enriches how they interact and how they experience the work that they are doing in our businesses. And so, you know, what I'm telling you is, you know, well studied, not particularly among cooperatives, but well studied in the world. And this gentleman, Dr. Putton, he, you know, his work on social capital was so acclaimed that he received, you know, the presidential award. And what he said was community connectedness is not just warm, fuzzy tales of civic triumph, right? It's not stuff that we say, oh, we had a potluck. That was so great. You know, we had a volunteer day. That's so great. In measurable and well-documented ways, social capital makes an enormous difference in our lives. Social capital makes us smarter, healthier, safer, richer, and better able to govern a just and stable democracy. So I say for us to really live up to our identity and our commitment to democracy as cooperatives, right? We have to function on this connectedness, right? We have to focus on trust. We have to focus on relationships, right? Because then it allows for this democracy and this governance through democracy to really be fulfilled. So measuring social capital. So, okay, what are we talking about, right? What are we talking about? So let's break it down. A component of social capital is trust and solidarity, right? Built within relationships, right? So again, the nature of the relationship. And this is without even doing an analysis, you can ask yourself, how are our caregivers doing, right? You know, what is the dynamic? You know, what is the really the temperature of the work relationships that we have? So we can ask questions like, can most people in our co-op can be trusted? That can be yes, no. You know, it can be a scale, maybe, somewhat, not sure, right? Most people in our co-op are willing to help if you need it. That's solidarity, right? If I'm there, will people help, right? Would you say that most people can be trusted in our co-op, or that you can't be too careful in dealing with other people in our co-op, right? So is there trust? Is there trust among the members in the cooperative, right? We're asking families to trust us, but have we built trust in our cooperatives, right? So we can also look at this in terms of people who are coming into the cooperative business, right? So what we like to do is see what the challenges that our members have in adopting the cooperative identity, right? Is that are we recruiting people who have trust issues? It doesn't mean we disqualify them, but it's important for us to know if we're going to serve them as members, we're going to have to deal with the issues of trust. And I will just tell you, African Americans, because of our historical experiences in the workplace, that trust is an issue for us, right? And so that's often one of the things when we do cooperative education, people will say, ooh, I have a hard time trusting people. Ooh, I don't really deal with people like that, right? So we know that in our education and orientation, we have to focus on this issue of trust. People generally do not trust each other when it comes to lending or borrowing money, right? So I may trust people, but when you talk about money and co-ownership, me putting my money in this business, I don't know about that, right? So again, if the trust is low or people have challenges trusting, then those are things we need to know, because that's gonna inhibit their full functioning in the cooperative business model. Okay, so trust, again, you can come up with all kinds of ways to assess if trust exists in your cooperative among your members, or as you're recruiting people, do they have any challenges with the ideal of trust? Socializing and sociability, right? This is a big one. We know that, many times caregiving is something that's very isolated and people feel cut off, right? So this ideal about we can't build social capital if we're not willing to socialize and be with other people, right? So asking ourselves, do people get together? Have you met with people in the co-op either to talk, go out to eat together, or have drinks? Are people socializing informally? Have you gotten together with people in the co-op to play games? Are you recreating together, right? Have you ever been to someone else's home, right? Then that's really relationship building, because that's a place of vulnerability. Have you visited a home of someone, or have you had someone at your home? Okay, so again, assessing where people are, how they're relating, right? And then in the past 12 months, how often have you participated in a family event or ceremony? So again, for some people, they're not socializing, right? And so if they're coming into our cooperative businesses, and I know with COVID-19, this is a little bit different, right? But if they're coming into our businesses and they don't have the ability to socialize, then we may want to have workshops or opportunities that build that up, right? Talking about why socializing is important, having activities where they can socialize, creating events with our members, right? Again, these are ways that we support members, right? How do we serve our members? We serve them by helping them build social capital. How do they build social capital? By socializing. So we support them in that. Cooperation, right? This is not unfamiliar to us, right? So here we're talking about mobilizing resources and sharing risk, right? And investing in and maintaining common goods, right? So some people have a hard time with cooperation. We've heard it, right? We have people who are in our cooperatives and they're really just thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about others, right? So being able to think about that and talk about that, right? So if something happened to someone in this cooperative, how likely is this would people get together to help them, right? So you can be asking yourself, what happens when there's a death in anyone's family? Are we supporting that, right? In our cooperative, we always make a donation to people when they have a death in their family. Because of COVID-19, when members have the anniversary of the death of a loved one, we send something, a card, a flower, right? Because this is very painful. We want them to know we're there for them, right? How willing are people in our cooperative to help each other, right? Do you think there's helpful, right? Maybe we are helpful, but people don't perceive us as helpful. So how do we work on that? Do you think most people in the cooperative would contribute their money and time to something that benefits others in our cooperative but does not directly benefit them, right? So when we had a death, one of our cooperative members lost her mother. People pitched in and said, we don't want the co-ops have to pay for, the flowers and the donation. We're going to put our money in there, right? And that was the realization that people care about one another. Again, and then asking people before they come into the cooperative, how involved are they in cooperation, right? So, and sometimes this is really strong for some people, and for sometimes it's not. So again, having to develop a new muscle within them. And then agency and political action. This is really important, right? Because what we're arguing to people is that together we're stronger, right? Do people see that? Do they really think that us being together is stronger, right? Because it's something about us having control of our lives, fostering power, right? In our lives, in our community, in our society. And I just want to say to you, working with people of African descent, this is very challenging, right? Because for many times, individuals in my community have felt that when they stand up, when they assert themselves, nobody listens, right? No one listens, right? And there is no one, people are not receptive, right? And they're living in situations where they're being pushed around by their subsidized housing provider. They were fired from a job. I'll never forget a gentleman that worked in our construction company. His time was wrong every week. And every week I would try to resolve it. And I said, what's wrong? And he finally said, well, we don't do our time. Somebody else does our time, right? But he wouldn't tell me because he was afraid that he would get fired, right? And it was a moment of clarity, even though I've been preaching and we've been talking about we care about everyone, everybody has a voice, you matter. If you're not here, we don't have a business. But he did not believe me, and he did not believe us because of his past personal experiences. He had just lost a job where the person had fired him because the supervisor said something that wasn't true, right? So those are lived experiences, and we have to know that we can't ask people to come in and be champions for this business when they have never been champions for themselves, right? And so teaching people and giving people an opportunity to realize their agency and their political power. So since joining the cooperatives, right? Are we helping people do that, right? Are we participating in any way? Are we helping any election? Or doing anything that shows a cooperative that when we get together, something happens, right? So we can't be talking about something that people don't see because people don't believe us if they don't see it happening, right? So being able to get involved in things that the cooperative can see because of us, this thing is better, right? Whether it can be even something at a school. Did you go and speak at a school board a school board meeting because you have a lot of families who have children or because you're working in a community where there's issues in the school, right? You got to do something to show people that they have a voice and that voice matters, right? And so overall, do you feel you have power to make important decisions that change the course of your life? Because again, we're asking people to make decisions that change the course of the business, but I don't even think anything I do would help me, right? So why would I go to a membership meeting? Why would I go to the board meeting? Why would I don't have anything to say, right? So again, we've got to understand where people are and realize that this work is on a continuum. And then lots of people find it difficult to get out and vote. Did you vote in the last state national presidential election, right? So again, that's like some baseline things that we can really ask. And so I just want to end with saying, with a favorite quote by Bell Hooks, right? When you wake up and find yourself living someplace where there is no one you love and trust, no community, it's time to leave town and pack up and go. And where you need to go is any place where there are arms that can hold you that will not let you go. And I believe that that's what cooperatives can do. They can hold people, right? And not let them go. They can exist and create and be examples of love and trust and really communities, right? Cooperatives must be places where people want to be. They feel that there's some value in being there. And I believe that will allow us to go through the difficult times and to really create strong cooperatives that can really be sustainable, right? Before the financial benefits actualize themselves, before there's a return on our investment share, right? Before we're able to have healthcare insurance, right? Because if we wait to have those things, then we're going to wait to have cooperatives. But what I can give people, what we can offer, is a place where we have arms that can hold you, that will not let you go, that will support you to the best of our ability, and that will be a community for you. And you will realize that we are someplace that you want to be, because we have social capital and we have really the values that we believe make a difference in our agency than traditional agencies that you've experienced. And I'm going to stop here for questions, even though I have a little bit more to share, but I want to pause. So do we have any questions? How do you typically collect responses? You can do a couple things, right? You can do focus group conversations, right? You can do a Survey Monkey, a Google form, right? You can be very informal, right? Just asking a couple questions. You can do a little feedback box, right? Question of the week, right? Question of the month, right? And just begin to really, because the goal, you can be as formal with this as you want to. Doing a formal research around this, you can use this to really document why your cooperative business is an investment in the lives of individuals, unlike other businesses, right? So Harvard, School of Business teaches social capital. And if you Google social capital and business, you'll see articles from them, right? So you can really use this to really talk to your elected officials and decision makers. You can also use it informally just to get a way of understanding the culture and the social norms of your cooperative business. So you can do that along a spectrum. There are lots of toolkits that exist, right? That will actually give you questions that you can adapt and use in your cooperative, right? So this is very feasible to do. It's really just starting with a curiosity. I will also say you can partner with the university. If you have a local university, right? And work with a professor at a business school or the School of Social Work or public health, right? And say, we really believe that we're doing something that is different. And we want to really articulate the benefits. And we think we're creating some social capital, right? So you can also work with university partners and others to help, collect information in this area. Thanks for that question. Any other questions or just thoughts? You don't even have to have a question. You can just give your reflection on the information. It's a lot to take in.
Julia shared a
Julia
question.
had asked, excuse me. This is Mary Claire. I was going to say a question in the chat from Julia was, what would you think the most important aspect of social capital is for you and your co-op?
I mean, I think trust, right? Because I think it's very difficult for people to really function in a cooperative if they're challenged with trust, right? And trust, of course, is the basis of building relationships, right? And so, I think working, and I see the question. So around how do you build trust? So I think I think trust is fundamental. And I think you build trust through interactions, right? You really build trust and you call out trust, right? Such as, we needed someone to fulfill a shift, and there was a challenging shift, or it was a last minute, and so decided to take the shift. Just want to shout out and thank you, because being able to trust one another to show up, right? Even doing acknowledgements, right? Where, trust is this idea that we give you a shift, you show up, right? When it is that you say you're going to show up, right? You do what it is that you say you're going to do. That's trust, right? So again, showing people that people can be trusted, right? When people change shifts, right? We needed someone to take over a shift for so-and-so. They did it. Shout out to Julia, right? For taking that shift and delivering, right? Those are the kind of ways that we build trust. Trust is really built in proximity with other people, right? Having people car ride, right? Share rides, right? Trusting that someone is going to pick you up. I just want to tell you, I'm very nervous, right? If I say, can you take me to the airport? I'm nervous, like, are they going to be late? Oh, I don't know. I get anxious. You know what I'm saying? I have a little trust in this area, right? So I'm like, oh, let me take myself to the airport, right? But when my love collaborator shows me that he's going to show up, pick me up, and drop me off, then I'm able to relax, right? So I want you to think about this in your own mind. What areas do you have difficulty trusting, right? And what helps you build trust, right? Knowing that you're going to be there. I'll tell you this one thing. The people learn to trust us when we pay them on time, right? When we pay them on time, they begin to trust us like, ooh, okay. Because people have lost their wages, right? So we build trust by just paying people. I'm going to pay you by 2:00, right? That's one of my key things. You're going to have your money. I'm going to pay you at 2:00. That makes people feel that they can trust us, right? So it's small ways, but again, bringing people together and allowing them to be together. And I would even tell you, talk about the issue of trust. Don't make it like something we do in secret. Trust is a hard concept, right? We want to work on trust in our cooperative business, right? So let's talk about trust and why trust is hard or why trust is important. So I think I would even just bring it up and talk about it. No problem, Lucha. I can feel your energy. Another question? So I want to say this, I'm making this fancy word called social capital, right? But this is the stuff that we do every day in our lives, right? It's the stuff of family. It's the stuff of community. We know this stuff, right? It's just that someone has convinced us that this is not the key piece for building a strong cooperative, right? They've convinced us that the other stuff really matters, the metrics and the dash, and all of that does matter. I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but at the heart of what we do, particularly as women, as people of culture, right? We do this stuff. This is what it is that we bring to this work. And so I'm reminding people to bring their full selves to their work, right? How do you want to be treated? What makes it a good place to be, right? So I'm just telling you, I'm using these fancy words, but this is what we do. We just have to uncover it and bring it forth. Yes, Miss Susanna? Miss Susanna?
Hola, buenas tardes. Yo estoy en
Good
Albuquerque.
afternoon. I'm in New Mexico, and we are starting a home care cooperative. And I have a question. How can somebody speak with one of our colleagues who's feeling or who's directing in the meetings and over on different topics around the cooperative? If she's the one who makes all the decisions, like as though she were a manager or the owner of the business, and the rest of us are staff people, what are some nice words, like you were saying, or Richard was saying, what are some nice words we could use to confront this issue?
Are we going to have interpretation?
We should. Let me just.
The interpretation was happening on the English channel. If you go down to the globe, at the bottom, and hit English, and then.
Oh, okay. We didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah, it was happening simultaneously.
Okay. Can someone help us? Can one of the interpreters help us? Because we missed the globe. I got some of it.
Bueno, decía que cómo poder, qué palabras
Un momentito.
Okay.
have you connected to the globe? She's repeating her question, so it can go simultaneous now, or I can repeat it consecutively.
You can repeat it
Simultaneously?
if you want to, either way.
Okay, I will. Vamos a repetirlo mejor, consecutivo. Voy a repetir exactamente lo que dice usted.
Ok, gracias. Bueno, ¿qué palabras elegantes me recomienda para usar? Nosotros estamos iniciando una cooperativa. Bueno, todavía no arrancamos, pero estamos en el proceso de formar toda la documentación y tenemos nuevas reclutas o nuevas integrantes miembros. Y si alguna de las
Oops, disculpa, voy a empezar con la primera parte. What are some words that you would recommend using? We have a situation where we're just starting our cooperative. We're just gathering our first members, and we have a situation where some of the members, okay, ahora sí.
Por ejemplo, digamos, si tenemos una de las compañeras que se siente como que es la que conoce todo o se siente que es como la dueña de la cooperativa o muestra como si fuera la manejadora. ¿Cómo podemos nosotras, el resto de las miembros, hablar con esa persona para que ella vea que también es un miembro dueño y no es la dueña de la cooperativa?
So we have a situation where a member feels that she knows everything. She acts as though she's the owner of the cooperative or the manager of the cooperative. What words could we use, or what is a way that we could express to her that she's one of many member owners and speak with her about this power dynamic?
One of the things that we've done is come up with what's called relational agreements. And relational agreements are really about this kind of culture about power, right? Where we say everyone's opinions matter, right? No one opinion is greater than the other, right? Where we really call out this behavior without calling people out, right? And we talk about it explicitly, right? You know, how do we want to be treated, right? You know, and then even in ways, you know, what we call it, sharing airspace, right? Where we don't let any one person dominate in the conversation, right? That's just a structural way. We're going to talk about this issue for 15 minutes and everyone gets 2 minutes to express themselves, right? Because what we're doing is creating a container of safety, right? And Susanna, you're really talking about something important. It happens in our group, and I want to tell you what it is. And a part of this is understanding what need is not being met in these situations. And what we realize is when one person is attempting to exert themselves, what they really need is to be valued and recognized, right? So we do a better job of identifying that they need to be recognized and acknowledged, right? And we try to work around that instead of seeing it as behavior that we don't like. We see it as some people, you know how when you have children, you know, and some children just need more attention, right? They need to be the star of the show. That, you know, they just have this need, right? And you're like, but I got all these children, you know, but you have to still deal with that child's need. And I'm not trying to associate people as children, but we all have the same basic human needs, right? And so again, finding ways to support them and acknowledge that, but then helping them understand how that's impacting the group, right? And then eventually you get to a conversation and say, when we don't share time, other people can't give themselves, right? Other people can step up, and we need those people to step up. So those are the kind of, like, I call them the corporate relationships. You know how people call it HR? I call it these cooperative relationships, right? And that is, you know, I would also say, you know, look into something that's called nonviolent communication or compassionate communication, right? Because we also need some tools to relate to each other better, right? You know, and I want to, and you know, you have to understand, people come from families, they come from all these situations, and then they come into our cooperatives, And sometimes the situation they came from wasn't as healthy, you know, or sustaining to them, and didn't prepare them for this cooperative work. So we don't see them as negatives. So remember, our job is to meet the needs of our member owners. It's to help us all get the pieces that we didn't get that we need, right? And I know it's like, well, we got to run the business. But if we don't attend to this stuff gets in the way of our business. I hope that's helpful.
Y
So,
fue
you know,
excelente, muchas gracias.
oh, thank you. So I just want to
Yes,
say,
that
you
was
know,
excellent. Thank you.
yeah, we got to practice this stuff in our meetings. So that's why we do these agreements, right? And we talk about these things, right? You know, letting everyone speak, you know, just like good housekeeping practices, right? All the stuff we need to do to make people feel safe, secure, heard, and valued. And I like agreements. Agreements do a really good job of that. And then you're not calling out anybody, right? You're calling people in and not calling them out.